Welcome to Healing, Hope, and Health, the program that proudly highlights the mission and services of Hospice of Washington County. I'm Bernadette Wagner. I'm so glad you could join us for today's show. Our first guest is Lindsay Anderson, the Director of Volunteer Services for Hospice of Washington County. Hers is a huge job as she's responsible for recruiting, training, placing, evaluating, and recognizing hundreds of volunteers every year. Lindsay will explain the important role volunteers play, enumerate some of the available volunteer opportunities, and explain how you, our viewers, can get involved. Lindsay, thanks for joining us today.
Thank you so much for having me.
So can you just start off by telling us why it's so important to have volunteers with hospice?
We truly value our volunteers at Hospice of Washington County, and we really could not do what we do without having our volunteers. We, as you've probably explained on other shows, we have a very holistic approach to caring for patients. We really rely on an entire team of people to provide the best care for our patients. So the volunteers really help us with providing the emotional support and respite relief for our families.
And so sometimes volunteers have different roles. Some are companion volunteers and some are office volunteers. Can you tell us just a little bit of some of the ways that our volunteers provide and support the mission?
That's one of the nice things about volunteering at Hospice of Washington County is there are a variety of different ways that somebody could help. Our largest group of volunteers are our companion volunteers. They're the ones that go out into the field and spend time with our patients and families, doing a whole bunch of different things, from giving family members a couple of hours relief to go run errands, to just sitting with the patient and listening to their stories about their life, to running errands for the family. So they do a lot of different things. Then we have office volunteers as well. So we have some volunteers that do courier for us, so they take doctor's orders to and from physicians' offices from us, or just help out with tasks around the office. We have special service volunteers, so we have licensed cosmetologists that cut patients' hair. We have licensed massage therapists. We even have some pet therapy volunteers that visit our patients with their dogs. And then our Life Center volunteers that provide receptionist help in our community life centers in Hancock, downtown Hagerstown,
and very shortly Boonesboro.
Yeah.
Yes. What are some of the, what do the volunteers tell you about their experience? Why do they volunteer?
I think we tend to get a lot of people that come to us wanting to volunteer because they've had their own personal experience with hospice and they want to be able to give back. So they've had a family member who has had hospice services, or we've had some people come to us because they've had a health scare themselves. They've had cancer perhaps, and know what it's like to be a patient, and want to be able to help another patient.
And I think one of the beautiful things about our companion volunteers is just their presence, their willingness to be present too, and not try to fix somebody, but just to be present with whatever's going on.
We often say that they're the only member of the team that's not going in with any type of agenda. So they're not going in to get a blood pressure, they're not going in to help with funeral planning, they're really just going in to be there for whatever the patient or family wants, and that really creates a unique relationship. And so many of our volunteers say that they get a whole lot more back than they give. I
imagine that that unique relationship can also be difficult for volunteers when a patient dies. Do your volunteers find the work depressing?
You know, that's what a lot of people would think, that it would be depressing. It can be sad at times, but for the most part, there's a lot of joy and laughter that our volunteers experience. Of course, if they've had a patient for a while, they might get that special relationship, and they might need a couple of weeks off after the death before being assigned to another patient, and we certainly would support the volunteer if they needed to do that. And then we have our grief and bereavement services, and certainly our volunteers would be welcome to go through any type of counseling if they would need it.
That's great. What qualities or skills should a companion volunteer possess?
In addition to being caring and compassionate, of course, being a reliable and dependable person is probably one of the most important traits that somebody would need to have, because you know, when somebody is a hospice patient, the family, they're dealing with a lot of overwhelming situations. So to be able to know that they can count on a volunteer, not have to worry about that, is so important. And then I think the next most important trait would be to be a good listener. It's really about the patient and allowing them to voice, whatever they want to voice.
Would you care to talk a little bit about the process of going to becoming a volunteer? What steps do they need to take?
They have to go through very similar steps as somebody would to be a paid employee, which we like to tell our families so that they know that they can trust our volunteers. They have to complete an application and come in to meet with me for an interview. And then there is a training program that they would have to go through once they've been approved to be a volunteer.
And you do background checks on all the volunteers?
We do, yep. We do criminal background checks and references on all of the volunteers.
I imagine that provides families with a measure of comfort.
Absolutely.
When are the next volunteer training sessions to be held?
We have one coming up in January. It starts on January 12th. It's the 12th, 16th, and 21st, and it's from 12 to 4 p.m. on each of those days.
Yeah. And what is the time commitment that volunteers commit to at Hospice of Washington County?
It really varies. For our companion volunteers, we generally tell them that the commitment is about once a week for up to 4 hours of their time. For our office volunteers, Life Center volunteers, those who work kind of behind the scenes, we can kind of cater it to whatever their schedule is. So if they want to volunteer once a week or once every other week, we can work with that.
Well, Lindsay, thank you so much for being here today and explaining this incredible opportunity to me and to our viewers.
Thank you so much.
When we honestly ask ourselves which person in our lives means the most to us, we often find that it's those, instead of giving much advice, solution, or cures, have chosen rather to share our pain. The friend who can tolerate not knowing, not curing, that is the friend who cares. This beautiful quote by Henry Nouwen made me feel so moved when I read it, and it made me just indebted to our companion volunteers here at Hospice of Washington County. If you are interested in volunteering at Hospice of Washington County, please give Lindsay a call today. I'm betting you won't regret it. We'll be right back.
I'm the hometown favorite.
I'll outsmart you.
I will beat you.
I'll be surrounded by fans cheering me on.
There's no place like home for fighting cancer.
My turf.
My time.
My team.
Expert care, close to home. The John R. Marsh Cancer Center at Meritus Health.
Hi, I am Dr. Olenzak at the Pain and Spine Institute. I specialize in the most advanced procedures and technology available in pain management. At your visits and procedures, you will always see me for continuity of care. I would like to thank all of my patients for allowing me to provide you with the specialized care that you need. To give you this level of care requires a team. This is your team at the Pain and Spine Institute. To become a patient, call 301-739-7900 or go to painfree-md.com.
Welcome back to Healing, Hope, and Health. It is my pleasure to introduce two individuals who have made a tremendous difference to our community. For years, Ira and Carol Laurie, husband and wife, have served and continue to serve on numerous nonprofit boards, all committed to strengthening the community and assisting families affected by serious illness and poverty. Ira has served on the board of directors for Hospice Washington County since 2004, and for a short time served as the interim director. He also established Hospice of Washington County's Jennifer Fund. Dr. and Mrs. Laurie are here today to tell us about the history of the Jennifer Fund, and also to tell us about the Jennifer D. Laurie Children's Therapy Room, which was recently dedicated at the Hagerstown Community Life Center. Thank you for being here. It's a pleasure to have you both.
Well, thank you for inviting us.
So, Dr. Laurie, maybe you could start off by telling us a little bit about your daughter and the history of the Jennifer Fund.
Well, you know, the Jennifer Fund we created because we found out that hospice services for children cost more than hospice services for adults. And there wasn't a way to pay for some of those extra costs and to get extra services that those children needed. We also found that there are families who have need for hospice for the adults in the family who have school-age children. And those families often need extra care to help care for those children and offer the services that the families completely need.
And so the Jennifer Fund can be used for if children are sick or to support the children in a family where an adult is sick.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and that's a little new from when you first started it, right?
Yeah, we first started just for extra services for children. But two things happen. We don't serve that many children in Washington County, but we do serve a lot of families that do have children. And those people need many of the same kinds of services.
And part of the reason that the care for children is more expensive is because with children they're still seeking aggressive treatment and curative treatments, correct?
Well, they're still doing that, which you can't do with adults, but you can do with children. You can provide any kind of service that you need. So that's one of the costs. Another one of the costs are things like child care for other children in the family when the parents are busy working on the medical care of their child. Things like respite care when families have to go off to other medical centers, like going to Baltimore or Washington or Pittsburgh to get specialized services for their children.
That is such a generous gift. I was wondering if you could tell us a little bit about your daughter who inspired this generosity.
Well, Jennifer was a wonderful child. When she was 13 years old, right after her bat mitzvah, she developed a lymphoma. She developed two kinds of lymphoma at the same time, unfortunately. And over the next year and a half, she was sick and ultimately passed away in 1986. When Jennifer was sick, hospice services were fairly new. And actually, we did have hospice, was supposed to come the day she died. But at the same time, we were getting treatment at Walter Reed Hospital. And they provided us services that in retrospect were very much like hospice services. So I understood what that extra kind of service and
the importance of that
could help Jennifer during her last days and help us during her last days and afterwards.
That's terrific. Just real briefly, I was wondering if you can tell us about the Jennifer D. Laurie Children's Therapy Room at the Hagerstown Community Life Center.
Well, one of the things that Hospice of Washington County does is we have a large grieving program. I've just forgotten the name of it. Bereavement program. Right. And one of the largest populations that get served in our bereavement program are children whose parents have died or whose other significant others have died. And with this grieving program or the benevolence program, we are moving into community centers, and we have one in Hagerstown, we have one in Hancock, and we're going to have one in Boonesboro. And within these centers, one of the things that we do is we offer therapy for people who are having problems with grieving. And children as being part of that, we felt that it was appropriate to name the therapy room at the Hagerstown Center after Jennifer.
That's terrific.
Now, in that room, there's also a corner for Christopher Lewis, who was the child who was getting services at Hospice of Washington County that sparked my interest in creating the Jennifer Fund.
Well, thank you so much for sharing that story and for being with us here today. I'd like to thank the Lauries and you for joining us on today's program. Jennifer lost her life to lymphoma, but their love for her never ended. In fact, she continues to be loved, and fortunately for all of us in Washington County, she's inspired Dr. Laurie to act generously towards others. In paying tribute to Jennifer, the Lauries demonstrate how good can come from pain and how serving many can stem from remembering one. If you want to donate to the Jennifer Fund or want to learn about honoring your loved one, please call 301-791-6360.
People don't realize it takes a lot to care for a family member in your home. John's dad was very headstrong, so I think that was a lot for him to get over and try to come to terms with that he had terminal illness. I would recommend everybody to get hospice involved at the get-go. When you first learn about it, get it set up. It's going to make it, I mean, it's terrible what you're going through already, but it's going to make it easier for you in the long run because we couldn't have done it without them.
Call Hospice today. Hospice of Washington County, when time matters most.
From the smallest item of jewelry to the largest ceramic elephant, every 10,000 Villages handcrafted product makes a remarkable journey.
All over the world, our products travel similar paths, over thousands of miles and years of artistic tradition. Our handcrafted gifts represent work that builds villages and sustains souls. They are the dream of a better life made real. Every product is a miracle.
Welcome back. Thanks for being here today. Our next guest is Robin Morris, a licensed clinical social worker and certified counseling trauma professional. Robin has been a bereavement specialist with Hospice of Washington County since January 2010 and works closely with Washington County Public Schools, the Department of Juvenile Services, and the Department of Social Services to provide support and therapy for children with grief-related issues. Robin joins us today to help us understand how children grieve differently from adults, how to recognize behaviors that grieving children may display, and to share some tips for supporting children who are grieving. Welcome, Robin. Thanks for being here.
Thank you, Bernadette.
We're so glad you're here. So, Robin, first of all, do children grieve differently than adults?
Oh, they absolutely do. And the thing that makes it different for children is that children are easily distractible. So therefore, they grieve in small increments over longer intervals. So most often, children and adolescents grieve for a longer period of time than adults would normally do.
And that's because they're grieving a little bit here and then they go off to do
something else, and then a thought or a memory will come back and the feelings will come back, and then something will come up to distract that thought, and they'll go to that, cartoons, ice cream or whatever. And
so what are the symptoms or the signs that children are grieving?
Well, when you're talking about the infant child, usually that child will become sad, cry, tearful as they see adults acting out sadness or feeling sad. Your preschooler, more than likely, will suddenly want to be treated like a little one. In other words, maybe wanting to be fed, wanting to be held, wanted to be nurtured a little bit more than usual.
So they regress a little bit.
They regress a little bit, that's right. Your middle school child will oftentimes become very, very conflictual and resentful of the fact that they feel sad and they don't know why. And then what is most distressing to see is that adolescent who is struggling with the fact that they feel they're supposed to be acting like an adult, but they have these feelings making them vulnerable. So they then start taking risk-taking behaviors to prove to themselves that they are invincible and can handle whatever.
They're tough.
That they're tough, right.
Yeah, that's quite interesting. What are some of the signs that indicate that children and adolescents are beginning to move forward? I mean, as they do deal with their grief, do you see a decreasing in these behaviors? Are they more communicative about grief?
Absolutely. When a child begins to feel better about feeling sad, if that makes sense, they talk about it.
It's sort of like when they accept it, then they begin to talk about it.
Then they talk about it, that's right. And your adolescents will oftentimes ask for help.
So, Robin, could you share a little tips with our parents and caregivers out there on ways to support children who are grieving?
I think the most important thing for adults and caregivers to understand is that they must themselves be willing to model healthy grieving. When you're sad, you're sad. Let your children know that you're sad. Let them know why you're sad.
Yeah, because if they're hiding their feelings and the message the kids are getting is, I shouldn't be having these.
I shouldn't have these feelings. That's absolutely right.
And how about in terms of children sharing the information with their peers or with their schools? What do you recommend about that?
I recommend to all parents and caregivers that they talk with their children to find out how they want the information to be shared. Don't just assume that your teenage daughter wants everyone in her sophomore class to know that there's been a death in the family. Find out from her.
And honor their wishes.
And honor their wishes.
Okay. And how about in terms of asking children to talk about their grief? Should they be approached or should we leave them alone? What's the best way for that?
I honestly believe that the best way is to ask.
To invite them.
To invite them to speak, give them permission to speak, absolutely.
And if a child is grieving, should a parent or a caregiver make a child go for support, or is that something that you wait and do it when they show they're ready?
I believe that grieving is a natural function, a natural process of life. So unless you are seeing an increase in isolated behaviors or an increase in risk-taking or an increase in aggression, let your child go through the normal processes of grief. If your child's behaviors become frightening to you or disturbing to you, take your cue from that.
Okay. And how important is it for parents and caregivers to model and to take care of themselves during the grieving process? Especially
when the death event involves the death of a parent, the surviving parent needs to be mindful that they have to prove to their youngsters that they're going to do everything possible not to leave them. So you have to be healthy, eat right, sleep right, get exercise.
Take care of yourself.
Take care of yourself.
Well, Robin, thank you so much for being here today. I'd like to thank Robin for sharing her experience and knowledge with us today. Obviously, grieving the death of a loved one is difficult, but fortunately, for both children and adults, it does not have to be done alone. Hospice of Washington County is here to support those who have lost a loved one, no matter how old or how young. Please give Hospice of Washington County a call. We care. Let us help you.
Harbors Carson Jewelers has been your community jeweler for over 110 years. We have the region's largest selection of diamonds, designer jewelry, including bridal, gold, and silver fashion jewelry, and fine Swiss timepieces. We strive to combine quality, expert personal attention, and affordable financing to create an exceptional shopping experience aimed at exceeding your expectations. At Carson's Jewelers, there's something for everyone that will bring a smile to that someone special in your life.
This is our home. It's where we've all decided to put down roots and raise families, not because we had to, because we wanted to. And as a business owner, you pour every ounce of energy into doing what's right for you in this community, and you won't and you don't stop until you get what you want, and neither do we. We're Antietam Cable Productions, and it's time to stand up and be seen and heard. You have a voice, and we'll help you tell your story. Antietam Cable Productions, putting the beat into the heart of your business.
I'm the hometown favorite.
I'll outsmart you.
I will beat you.
I'll be surrounded by fans cheering me on.
There's no place like home for fighting cancer.
My turf.
My time.
My team.
Expert care, close to home. The John R. Marsh Cancer Center at Meritus Health.
People don't realize it takes a lot to care for a family member in your home. John's dad was very headstrong, so I think that was a lot for him to get over and try to come to terms with that he had a terminal illness. I would recommend to everybody to get hospice involved at the get-go. When you first learn about it, get it set up. It's going to make it, I mean, it's terrible what you're going through already, but it's going to make it easier for you in the long run because we couldn't have done it without them.
Call Hospice today. Hospice of Washington County, when time matters most.
Welcome back. I'm glad you're still with us because I don't think you'd want to miss our next guest. Bill Cosner, who has been with Lowe's for 34 years, is the store manager of Lowe's on Vasel Boulevard near the Valley Mall. He values the company's emphasis on giving back to the community because it mirrors his own desire to support the community in which his store is located. Thanks to Bill's leadership, Lowe's on Vasel has been involved in many projects that have made a difference throughout Washington County. Bill joins us today to talk about Lowe's recent donation to Hospice Washington County in support of the Remembrance Tree Project. Welcome, Bill. Thanks for being here.
Thank you. So glad to be here.
Yeah. So Lowe's has this great reputation for being a company that supports the community. Can you tell us about your donation that is supporting the Remembrance Tree Project?
Well, I was approached by Hospice, Kathy Campbell, and she approached me on donating 2 trees toward the Remembrance program, and I thought it was a great idea. Wanting to give back to the community, I was glad to get involved.
That's terrific. So for our viewers, the Remembrance Tree is a program where trees are set up at our life centers and at our main office, and ceramic ornaments, angel wing ornaments, are located on or placed on the tree. And you are invited to come in and write the name of a loved one on a paper ornament or a message to a loved one. Hang it on the tree and take the ceramic ornament back home. The symbolism behind that is you are leaving and sharing your grief with us, but you're also taking our support home to you. So what does it mean to you personally, Bill, to be able to support a project like that?
Personally means a lot to me because especially during this holiday season, a lot of people are really in grief, and so it means a lot to me to be able to support something like that, to be able to reach out to the community in this way.
And what are some of the other projects that Lowe's has supported in the past?
Oh my, we have been involved in many projects. Lowe's actually created what we call a Heroes program, where every store is involved in the local community, and we've been in numerous community outreach programs, such as replacing smoke detectors and Remembrance at the park, and just a lot of great things.
You did a big project out at the Potomac Center. Do you care to mention that? With a landscaping project out there.
Oh, that was an awesome project. You know, we were able to go out there and re-landscape, volunteer time, and actually re-landscape the whole outside of the building.
I remember it was something like a $13,000 donation that Lowe's did, counting the volunteer hours.
It was huge.
Yeah.
And we were glad to be a part of it.
Yeah. Well, the community always appreciates Lowe's support. And just recently, Bill, you did a program with the city. I think it was held at your store. Can you tell our viewers a little bit about that?
It was an emergency preparedness project where we got involved with the city and local ordinances, and it was all about being prepared for, right now there's a lot of events that involve tragedy, tornadoes, floods, hurricanes. We actually had a flood in Clear Spring recently, and we were actually involved in helping them. And it's actually, you know, we sell a lot of products that involve emergency relief, and we're also there to educate the community on how to use those products as well.
And so at that particular event, you had the police, you had the fire department, you had EMS. It was quite a tremendous turnout.
Yeah, there was a lot of community involvement.
And how many people came to your event?
Oh my goodness, we were flooded. It was a great outpouring. We actually had the state police helicopter, emergency helicopter land on the premises. It was a huge event, and there was a lot of education that went behind it toward emergency preparedness.
So Bill, Hospice of Washington County certainly appreciates your support, and I hope that you'll consider doing it again in the future. I was wondering if you have other plans at this time to be involved in community programs.
Oh, we're always looking for community projects. We're always looking to be able to reach out. The community gives a lot to Lowe's in the way of what they spend with us. And I, as a store manager, and I know Lowe's as a company wants to be able to give back to the community. So it's a big part of what I like to do.
Well, thank you so much for being here, Bill. I'd like to thank Bill for joining us today and recognize Lowe's for its generous donation to the Remembrance Tree Project. If you are fortunate enough to have lived and loved, then I want to assure you that it is normal to grieve when a loved one dies. Hospice of Washington County wants you to know that you don't have to grieve alone. In addition to the Remembrance Tree Project, the organization offers grief counseling, workshops, and seminars, all at no cost, if and when you need support. For more information, contact Hospice of Washington County. Thank you for joining me today. And if you have any questions about hospice, please send us an email and let us know so that we can do our best to answer your questions on our next show. See you next time for Healing, Hope, and Health.